You ever wonder what the power of words can really do to you? Well, you're in luck. We touch on that in this episode, so let's connect. And thank you for taking the time to visit with me at the Connect Podcast with Mel Capers. I am your host, Mel Capers. So happy to be here with you. Listen, before we get going, let me just stop and take a pause and give thanks to my great Creator for allowing me just another opportunity to do His will on this side of heaven. I also want to take this time to send some shout outs to some great friends who've been with me from the beginning. I want to start with my mentor. She is Corliss Udwama. She is the founder and CEO of Agape Love in Action. She is doing amazing things in the community and especially for the veterans of our country. You need to check her out because Corliss is really an amazing person with an amazing company. Please go to her website at agapeloveinaction.com to learn more. Also want to thank a real good friend who's been with me every step of the way. She is Ronalda Sullivan. She has her organization called Dream Differently. She helps women move forward, get through the tough time. She is an executive coach, a life coach who does it well. You need to check her out. Please go by her website. She is at ronaldasullivan.com. I also want to thank another good friend. She is Sonia Pinckney Rhodes, CEO and founder of J.M. Pinckney Publishing. She has got it going on. Let me tell you, she was the publishing company that I went through to publish my book. You need to check her out. Please go by her website. She is at jmpinckneypublishing.com. Well, in this episode, we're going to start this season by talking about topics that we are going to do master classes in. And today's topic is going to be about the power of words. So here's how it's going to work. In our Connect podcast, we're going to introduce topics, talk about it, kind of like an overview of the topic and some of the things that we're really going to focus on. And then we're going to do master classes in our Coach's Corner podcast. We have two podcasts, the Connect podcast and our Coach's Corner podcast. So we're going to introduce it here in the Connect podcast. And then we're going to do master classes on the topic. So you want to learn more about what we're going to talk about in our Connect podcast, then you need to tune us in on the Coach's Corner. That's what we have straight ahead for you. We're still going to do the Connect podcast no matter what, but we just want to let you know we're going to dive deep into some real serious conversation, and we're going to do that through master classes. And the first one that we're going to talk about for the Coach's Corner podcast will be coming up right after we take a break and get into our first segment. Well, here we are in our first segment, and listen, this segment is really an overview of what we're going to be talking about in our master class, in our Coach's Corner podcast, and it is about the words, the power of words. You know, it's important. It's even in the Bible, it talks about the power of the tongue, and that's what we're really going after. We're going after how some people's words can make a difference in other people's lives, and so to really focus on it, you have to understand that what people say matters. And sometimes to some people, it matters more than others. But we're going to break it down in our Coach's Corner. We're going to talk to one of our adjunct professors who's a part of the Capers Leadership Group, and he's an expert on the subject. He's Dr. Doe. We're going to have some questions that we want him to address, and we're going to talk about it a little bit in the Connect podcast. But again, we're going to do a special masterclass on the topic in our Coach's Corner podcast. So that's what we're going to do in our first segment. We're going to talk about the power of words. We have an unbelievable topic that we are going to do a masterclass on, and it's about words. It's about the power of words and what the impact of words can do on people, societies, nations. I based this talk on John Maxwell's "Everyone Communicates, Few Connect." It's a long shot off of John Maxwell's, and it also I base this is on part of my book, Coaching Through Breakthroughs. So that's what we're going to be talking about: is how do you coach someone through the power of words and how to use words and how to make sure that it doesn't impact you in a negative way. So we have quite a bit of things that we want to talk about based on this topic. I have a good friend of mine who's going to join me, and I am pleased to have him on to answer a few questions that came up that I had in putting this particular masterclass together. Again, I want to thank you for being a part of this masterclass. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for digging deep. Our goal is that when you're done with this masterclass, you're going to be able to walk away having a clear understanding of the power of words and how you can become an influencer if you know how to use words in the correct manner. You can help others learn how to use words as well to become influencers. Now, when we're talking about influencers, we're talking about positive influencers. And you'll see there's a difference. We can have anybody who knows how to use words to convince people to do things that maybe they shouldn't do. So we're going to break it down, and we're going to talk about one topic today, and that is the power of words. And we really are going to look into how some people can use words to cause a mass of people to believe a certain way. And in another case, how people could be so influential that even what they don't say is actually picked up by the group that follows them. We'll share more of that in our masterclass. You know, I want to start this entire masterclass off with a Mentimeter presentation. I have a few people online that I want to help me get this information across to my listening audience. And so I created this slideshow in this program to ask just a handful of questions. And with these questions that I'm about to ask, I just want to get a poll and a feel for where people are. And that's going to lead us into our conversation with my guest, Dr. Doe, who will be here shortly. So let's start by showing you the survey questions that I put up. And I have some folks online right now to help us answer these questions. Okay, so here's our questions. Which of the following best describes your knowledge of how the federal government operates? And here are some of the answers coming in. Okay, based on what we have so far, the way it looks, the first answer is I'm extremely knowledgeable, and the second one is I'm in the middle on this question. So that's pretty good. So we have people who are somewhat knowledgeable of how the federal government operates. Our next question, which of the following do you believe is the most important topic we should address today? Gaslighting and its impact on people, diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, censorship of books in schools, dog whistling, and how it affects society. Wow, there it is. The highest priority of all the answers is dog whistling and how it affects society. Next question is, which of the following do you believe is the greatest harm to the future of our country? Choices are American democracy will come to an end, the American economy will crash, World War III will start in the next 5 years, and political officials. There will be assassination attempts on political officials. And here is the survey of how it came in. What is the number one out of the four? What's the number one answer that those of you I have on are answering? And it appears that the highest, well, it's still calculating, but it appears that the highest answers American democracy will come to an end, followed by the American economy will crash and political officials will be assassinated. And the last one is World War III will start in the next 5 years. Here's a good one. Politicians from which of the following governments do you trust the most? We have federal government, state government, local government, or none. Let's see how the survey comes in on those choices. It appears that those of you who are online, who are taking this survey, says that local government you trust the most, followed by state, federal, and there are some who said none of these governments that you trust, which is, it's almost heartbreaking, but that's the answers. Which of the following best describes your view of America for the next 5 years? I'm very optimistic. I am extremely concerned. I have lost confidence. A strong national leader will arise. Those are the choices for the answers to this question. Which of the following best describes your view of America for the next 5 years? And here comes the answers. And it appears that the number one answer, let's see, it seems like the number one answer is, it's still calculating. Wow, this is great. All right, so the number one answer for the question, which of the following best describes your view of America for the next 5 years, is a strong national leader will arise, followed by I'm extremely concerned, I've lost confidence, and I am very optimistic. So there is a hope that a national leader will be stepping forward soon in the next 5 years. Here's the next question. How do you get your news during the day? Do you get it from social media? Do you not pay attention to news, cable news, or newspapers, or from the internet? How do you get your news? And it appears that how the folks who are online, how they're answering this question is that the number one source of news, how do you get your news today, believe it or not, is social media, followed by cable network news, newspapers, and from the internet, and I don't pay attention to news. So social media is the number one place most people get their news from. So one of the terms we want to talk about is dog whistle. And what we mean when we talk about dog whistle, we're talking about the political use of dog whistling. Here's what Wikipedia says. So let me bring on my friend, Dr. Doe. Such a great honor to have you here, my friend. And listen, I just want to jump right into it. So let me ask you, and Wikipedia has its definition of dog whistle. And okay, let's hear it from you. What is meant by dog whistle?
My friend, thank you again for asking me to join you. It's really great to be with you today. Let me try to answer your question without boring your listening audience. Dog whistle is a communication strategy politicians use to convey specific messages to a targeted audience. Their intent is to send the message to a specific group without the message being clearly understood by the general public. The term a dog whistle is symbolic of a high-frequency whistle audible only to dogs, not to humans.
Okay, good. You know, I love examples. I love having a better understanding of whatever we're talking about through examples. So, do you have an example of when a dog whistle was actually used in front of the public's eyes?
Well, there was a time a few years ago when a former president during a presidential debate used a dog whistle when he said, "Stand back and stand by." This statement was a message to a white extremist group who clearly understood the message while the general public was trying to figure out what the president really meant by the statement. The bottom line is dog whistles are used by politicians to court support from a particular group without alienating other voters.
So, to the layman, when do we know a dog whistle, or a politician using dog whistles? When do we know that is actually happening?
Dog whistles are commonly associated with sensitive issues such as race, immigration, and cultural identity. Here is another example of a dog whistle based on race. Let's say there is a politician who uses coded language when speaking about law and order. The politician's intent is to appeal to voters who are, quote, tough on crime, end quote, without discussing a race of people usually associated with crime. Another example is the subject of welfare reform. To be honest, discussions about welfare reform might serve as a dog whistle for those who hold negative stereotypes about certain socioeconomic groups. The intended audience understands the hidden message in these cases, while others may perceive the statements as non-controversial. Let me just summarize with this statement. Dog whistles are politicians' crafty way of communicating with specific groups without being held accountable for potentially controversial or discriminatory remarks.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Dr. Doe. Is it harmful? Or when politicians use dog whistle, is it harmful?
The question of whether the use of dog whistle in politics is harmful requires careful consideration. While politicians may argue that it helps them connect with specific constituencies, the potential harm in terms of exclusion, polarization, distrust, and ethical concerns cannot be overlooked. The use of dog whistles may contribute to a growing distrust in politics. When citizens perceive that politicians are using covert messaging to manipulate public opinion, it tends to erode public trust in the democratic process. This erosion can and will have an impact on civic engagement, which in turn might cause the public to question the legitimacy of elected officials.
Dr. Doe, another word that came up during my research, and it can be a little bit confusing, and I would hope that you can help us clarify the definition of the word misinformation. Of course, there's something called disinformation and misinformation. But I'd like for you to share with us, or at least help us understand better, what does it mean by the term misinformation?
Melvin, this is an important question. Let me start by defining misinformation. Misinformation is simply incorrect or misleading information. It is untrue information that is deliberately given to people to make them believe it is indeed true. Unfortunately, on January 6, 2021, there were many people protesting at the U.S. Capitol who truly believed that the 2020 presidential election was stolen from the incumbent president. The protesters were convinced earlier on the morning of the 6th that as Americans, they had a right to march on the Capitol and stop Congress from certifying votes. As you know, the U.S. press coined this misinformation as the big lie. Misinformation can have far-reaching and detrimental consequences to the American way of life. Misinformation can lead to misguided beliefs and decisions that can influence people's perceptions of important issues. This can cause them to make uninformed decisions about their health, finances, or relationships. Even more severe is misinformation can contribute to the spread of fear, increase polarization, erode trust between communities, and even incite violence. Perhaps most concerning is the impact of misinformation on the democratic process. In a society where an informed electorate is crucial, misinformation can distort public opinion, influence elections, and undermine the integrity of democratic institutions.
Well, Dr. Doe, thank you so much for sharing with us your knowledge on this subject. I don't believe that I could have done it as clear as you did, and it just means so much to have you here. Thank you so much.
It was my honor to be with you, my friend. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you. So there you have it, our first topic of the season. It is for our Coach's Corner podcast. It is the power of words. We'll really get into it in our masterclass, and we want you to join us for our masterclass. Now, the way you would join us is you have to go to the website at melvincapers.com/coaching podcast. It's a paid subscription that you have to get into the masterclass, but you will learn so much about the power of words and all of our topics that we're going to be talking about. So we would love for you to join us. So please go to our website at melvincapers.com/coaching podcast. Again, melvincapers.com/coaching podcast to get into our Coach's Corner. The topic that we're going to have our first masterclass is going to be about the power of words. You don't want to miss that. You want to lock into that particular masterclass because we are really going to uncover some important things on our first of many to come this season. Listen, it has been a ball, y'all. We have had ourselves a good time. We want to provide you information that's useful to you for this time that we have for this year. This is going to be a very important year, and we want to make sure that you are very much informed of what's going on. We'll bring the topics on for you on our Connect podcast, and you can get into master classes and learn more from experts that we're going to be interviewing during our Coach's Corner podcast. You can get to our Coach's Corner podcast by going to melvincapers.com/coaching podcast. We want to do it for you. Listen, it's been a great time. I always enjoy being on with you. And I tell you what, just as I say every time I sign off, I'm looking forward to seeing you the next time.
We'd love for you to subscribe to our podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So please like, share, subscribe, and leave a review. You can also find us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Mel Capers Coaching. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.